So I made a video where I explained that nobody in the Old Testament knew or believed in the existence of hell, and that this is a historical truth that every biblical scholar knows, or that most scholars have known for more than 100 years. But upon the release of that video, I found myself bombarded by close to 1,000 very passionate comments in my socials, mostly telling me that I was wrong. So they proceeded to cite verse after verse in the Old Testament where apparently the word hell is actually there, it's written there. So was I wrong? Well, let me take another stab at it. But before I dive headfirst into the nitty-gritty of all those verses, there are some historical truths that will make this exegetical process a lot easier to understand. There are very important and logical reasons as to why the idea of hell never even crossed their minds. I will put the two main reasons in two different yet connected categories. Now, if you get this one, this will transform the way you view and read the Old Testament for the best for the rest of your life. So the two main reasons are ontological/biological, and the other one is theological/cosmological. Now, after taking a stab at this, I promise, I will address what most of you came to this video for. And that is to answer the question, but what about all of the Old Testament verses where hell is actually mentioned? So let's start with reason number one. Most modern Christians, not all, but most modern Christians believe that we are more than just flesh and bones, that we have an inner immaterial self that is basically immortal. And given that immortal quality, once our body dies, once our flesh and bones pass away, that immaterial self necessarily has to go somewhere. Some call it soul, some call it spirit, some call it like a combination of both. And some would even go as far as to infer that we are actually that immaterial self, that we're actually souls trapped in a body waiting for this body to die and rot so we can go back to our heavenly home where we came from. And so it's fair to say that we obviously believe that Old Testament people, Old Testament folks believe the same, which is surprisingly wrong. The Old Testament Israelites did not believe themselves to be souls trapped in a body, that once their body died, they would have to ascend somewhere or descend somewhere. And given that they did not believe this, they didn't need a theology of the afterlife. They didn't need to develop a theology of the afterlife. This is logical. The idea that humans are souls that have a body is foreign to Old Testament theology. You know why? Because this is mainly a Platonic idea that Judaism has started to play with or wrestle with just 200 years-ish before the birth of Christ. That is mainly called the idea of the pre-existence of the soul, that we were souls before we incarnated. And now that we kind of sort of trapped here, we're longing for the day when we're going to go back to that celestial place, back to our real home with God, a real home outside of the body, outside of flesh. But again, this is very foreign to Old Testament theology, to Old Testament characters, and frankly, it should be very foreign to Christianity. One of the greatest advocates against this Platonic understanding of who we are as humans that have infiltrated the church is none other than New Testament, right? N.T. Wright, Tom Wright, one of the most important New Testament scholars of our time. Listen to what he says.
We need to distinguish, for Plato and for the Christian Platonist tradition, which, as I say, is still very strong today, the idea of the soul is of an immortal soul which pre-existed its present embodiment in our present body and will go on existing because it's immortal. It can't be destroyed. The body is mortal, but the soul isn't. And that's been hugely popular in many Christian circles for many, many years. But it's that idea of an immortal soul, which I think the New Testament explicitly refutes. Paul says God is the only one who has immortality, and then God gives it to those who... Now
let's talk about the very important reason number two, theology/cosmology. So now we understand that they had no need for a theology of the afterlife. So what did they believe happened when they died? This is actually a very simple answer. No matter who you were, what you believed, where you lived, Israelites believed that everybody went to the same place, a place called Sheol. And contrary to what many people think, Sheol is not the Hebrew word for hell. It's far from it, as far as the east is from the west. Hell and Sheol are very different concepts. They are very different places, which originated in very different cultures, with different theologies, different languages, hundreds of years apart. There are no demons in Sheol, nor a Satan living there. Sheol is not a place of torment or where people actually experience some sort of consciousness, even though the consciousness part is somewhat debated by some scholars. Most Old Testament scholars and modern translators normally translate Sheol to grave or the place of the dead, as you can attest to when you read the NIV or the NLT. Now, what the ESV does is that whenever they see the word Sheol, they just write the word Sheol there. They don't translate it to grave or to hell, which is really helpful because we don't need to conflate both ideas because they are categorically different. Translating Sheol to hell is anachronistic. Hell is as foreign to Old Testament writers as the internet would be to Shakespeare. To put it one way, they were free from the hell and heaven binary. So the question then is, if they are indeed very different places, then why do some Bible translations still translate Sheol to hell, like the King James Version? Great question. Let's remember that the King James Version was created in 1611. And as time goes by, we know more of the ancient world and we improve our translations over time. For example, the King James Version still has unicorns in its translation. There are 9 passages that mention unicorns in the KJV. Here are 2 examples. And the unicorn shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast hurt me from the horns of the unicorns. We now know that unicorns don't exist. See, we change, we learn. As you well know, the ideas around hell have changed and evolved a lot. Dante's Divina Commedia, the Puritans, the Revivalists, the Left Behind series, Hollywood, unintentionally, and sometimes very intentionally, have terraformed our imagination when it comes to hell. Most translations don't translate Sheol to hell anymore. And if there is one person in the whole wide world that knows all of the Old Testament passages where apparently hell is mentioned, is me. I was never quoted as many Old Testament passages in my entire life as I have been in the past 2 weeks through the comments of almost, again, 1,000 people. Oddly enough, I think they wouldn't get as offended as they did if I said something bad about Jesus than hell. Apparently they're more protective of hell than they are of Jesus. So I decided to tally up all of the Old Testament passages that I repeatedly was told that I missed and that actually mention hell. So come to the computer with me and I'll quickly show you all of those verses. Bring the laptop.
Bring the action.
So let's start with Isaiah 14:15. We're going to start with the NIV. But you are brought down to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit. Now let's see what the King James Version does with this. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. The King James Version uses the word hell here. Let's see what the ESV does. So the ESV just keeps it as Sheol, but you are brought down to Sheol. So the KJV is translating Sheol to hell. Isaiah 14:9. The realm of the dead below is all astir to meet you at your coming. Let's see what the KJV does. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. Uses the word, it translates it to hell. Let's see what the ESV does. Again, it just keeps it as Sheol. Sheol beneath is stirred up to meet you when you come. The original word is Sheol, which is not translated in the ESV. So strap on, because I'm going to speed up this process just for the sake of time. Ready? Let's go. Isaiah 5:14. Therefore death expands its jaws, opening wide its mouth. KJV. Therefore hell hath enlarged herself and opened her mouth without measure. ESV. Therefore Sheol has enlarged its appetite. It's the original, it's Sheol. Psalm 86:13. For great is your love toward me. You have delivered me from the depths, from the realm of the dead. KJV. For great is thy mercy towards me, and thou hast delivered my soul from the lowest hell. Hell again in the King James Version. Let's go ESV again. You have delivered my soul from the depths of Sheol. The original word again is Sheol. Psalm 9:17. The wicked go down to the realm of the dead, all nations that forgot God. Let's go KJV again. Let's go KJV again. The wicked shall be turned into hell. KJV uses hell yet again. Let's go ESV. The wicked shall return to Sheol. The word is Sheol, not hell. Let's go to another psalm. Psalm 16:10. Because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead. KJV, I kind of know what they're going to do. For thou will not leave my soul in hell. Want to bet what the original word is? Let's go and check out the ESV. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol. Sheol is not hell. Proverbs 7:27. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. Let's see what the KJV does. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. The KJV uses hell once again. Let's go to the ESV. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. Original word again, Sheol. Let's go to Psalm 55:15. Let death take my enemies by surprise. Let them go down alive to the realm of the dead, for evil finds lodging among them. I kind of know what the KJV is going to do, but I'm going to show you I'm going to show it to you anyway. Here we go. Let death seize upon them and let them go down quick into hell. The KJV uses hell. I bet you kind of know what the original word is. Let's go to ESV and ta-da, let them go down to Sheol alive. Sheol is not hell. Psalm 86:13, for great is your love toward me. You have delivered me from the depths, from the realm of the dead. Want to bet what the KJV does? Place your bets, place your bets. Yes, for thou hast delivered me, for thou hast delivered my soul from the lowest hell. Let's see what the ESV does. And surprisingly, the word is depths of Sheol, which is not hell. Psalm 116, verse 3, the cords of death entangled me. The anguish of the grave came over me. I was overcome by distress and sorrow. So far, the NIV hasn't used the word hell at all. But let's see what the KJV does. Let's see. Where am I? The sorrows of death compassed me, and the pains of hell got hold upon me. Hell. We're doing ESV as we've been doing all along. The snares of death encompassed me. The pangs of Sheol laid hold of me. Sheol again. We're using different books from the Old Testament to show you how Sheol is everywhere. Let's go to Job 11:8. They are higher than the heavens above. What can you do? They are deeper than the depths below. What can you know? Let's see what the KJV does. It is as high as heaven. What canst thou do? What canst thou do? Deeper than hell. What canst thou know? Again, hell. ESV. Deeper than Sheol. What can you know? Sheol again. This ain't my fault. This ain't my fault. This is your fault for commenting as much as you did. This is your fault. If I go up on the heavens, you were there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If you read the KJV, you know exactly what the KJV is going to do. Oopsie, here we go. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art thee. It sounds cool, but it ain't hell. Let's go to the ESV only to find out that the word is not hell. The word is, if I make my bed in Sheol, you were there, which is a very different place. It's not hell. Those are basically all of the verses that you told me that apparently mentions hell in them. As you can see, the Hebrew word there is Sheol, and now we know the Sheol is not hell. So some of the comments and observations actually took a different route. Some people commented along the lines of, yes, we understand the Sheol and hell are different, but hell is still there, even though it's not mentioned literally. Some even told me that the presence of the devil in the Old Testament indicates that hell is also there. I guess their logic is there cannot be a devil without its house. By the way, I'm going to leave you a link over there and in the description below that talks about Satan, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I think that video is going to be really helpful for many today. Some comments even mentioned the idea of the day of the Lord. Some commented the Old Testament prophets repeatedly talked about a time where the Holy One will have his day, a day in which God would express his anger and judgment against sinners. Again, they refer to this as the day of the Lord. Other references call this the day of wrath or the day of judgment. So the question here would be, what is the day of judgment? What actually happens in the day of the Lord? Is it actually talking about the souls eternally burning in the fires of hell? Well, actually, the day of the Lord is a reference of God's liberation of Israel and the judgment of the oppressive powers and nations. And this actually started in the Passover way back in Egypt, when the Israelites were liberated from the tyranny of Egypt. And actually, that day of the Lord sometimes fell upon the Israelites themselves. God judged Israel and liberated the ones Israel was actually oppressing. I'll leave a link to a video by the Bible Project guys. They do a wonderful job explaining the idea of the day of the Lord. But in summary, this day was not referring to an afterlife, to a post-mortem judgment where God was going to send sinners to burn in hell. Far from that. The day of the Lord has a time and a context, and it's not 2023. Many people anachronistically import their ideas of hell into any verse that talks about judgment, especially when this judgment is described in verses of the Old Testament with colorful and poetic imagery like we find in the Psalms or even in the prophets. Now, there's nothing I can do to stop you from thinking that the day of the Lord is actually a day when God's gonna send millions and millions of people to hell and to burn, including the devil and Satan and demons. It is really tempting to do that. I know, I grew up like that. But the reality is actually a little bit more boring than that. Now, having said all of that, there is one book, the book of Daniel, which was written in 164 BC. This is the Old Testament book that was written last, even though it's not placed at the end in Protestant Bibles. If we do some math, giving the date on when Daniel was written, there is a chance that the authors of Daniel knew or heard about hell, and there's even a chance that they were somewhat influenced by the ideas of hell. The math does add up for that book. So when the authors of Daniel were writing their stuff and their prophecies, were they somewhat influenced by hell? Maybe. We can have a conversation on that. Now, that might have opened a whole can of worms. I'm just going to leave it open. I'm going to walk away. Now, one question that I was repeatedly asked as they questioned my integrity and how on earth I would call myself Christian after saying all those things was, why would you make a video saying all that? Like, why are you trying to confuse Christians? And to that I would say, would you accuse a parent of confusing their children when they explain how the bees and flowers actually work? Is sharing more accurate information analogous to planting seeds of doubt and confusion in the Christian camp? Do you know how terrible that sounds? You know, we're just different people. I would have killed to have this information years ago. But now that you have it, you get angry? You get angry that more people get to hear this and learn more about this? I don't know if you can sense and feel this, but I find the Bible more and more fascinating. The more questions you ask, the more exciting it gets, the more interesting it gets. I know most of us thought that the Bible was clear, or at least should be more clear or absolutely clear when it comes to the afterlife and hell and heaven. But surprisingly enough, it's not. And do you know what else the Bible is not clear about at all? Well, Satan. Especially when it comes to his origin. Where did he come from? And why do Old Testament characters never wrestle with him? Well, click right over here to find out.